Hello and welcome. Just recently I built myself a sword and a sheath, and I want to continue on that by building more swords. In this case, something from a movie that I absolutely love. I've got a growing list of things I wish to build, but I figured I should probably start with some of the simpler ones, and in this case I just want to build this one because it's very cool and very unique. And the sword I want to make today is Nausicaä's ceramic sword from the movie Nausicaä: The Valley of the Wind. That is an old Studio Ghibli movie from, I think, released in somewhere in 1980. One of the earliest, I believe. Do not quote me on that, I am not entirely sure. Either way, I fell in love with the movie. I've watched it many, many times over, and I currently don't know what else to build from the movie. I like to build props and other items based off of movies, video games, TV shows, books, or comics that I like. But when deciding which one to make, it can get a little difficult. And at the moment, the sword is probably the simplest thing. And I'm not even making it out of ceramic, I'm making it out of cardboard. But either way, it is the ceramic sword. It's going to be somewhat simple. I'm going to be showing you how I build it. This will not be a tutorial or anything, you just get to watch me build something. When making props or other items from movies or comics, generally you want to get as many reference photos as possible. Luckily enough for me, I have the internet, the movies, and the comics at my disposal, each with their own unique perspectives on the weapon. Unfortunately enough for me, Nausicaä is probably not as tall as I am. So I'm going to have to kind of change the designs in some ways so the sword will be able to fit my hand. There is also no given length. So I have no clue how long the blade length is, I have no clue how long the blade width is, I have no clue how long the blade handle is, or the sword's handle is. So I've got to kind of take my own creative liberties to make sure it fits into my hand. It is about the same size as the one seen in the movies and the comics, and I've got to make it look similar. All of those can be done, and what I'm going to do for that is I'm just going to make one trace and modify that until I like it. Something that is mentioned in the book, which is kind of helpful for what I am doing, is the ceramic sword is not a real weapon. It is used more as an everyday mountain sword, machete, like a sickle or an axe. Which means I do not have to make it super large like an actual sword. Since it is a machete, it needs to be a little shorter, and I'm going to be holding it with one hand. So taking something like this yardstick here, I can measure out just about how long I want the handle to be. And taking a quick look, I think I want it to be about 7 inches. So I'll have a little bit of space down here for the details of the pommel, and then I'll have a little bit of space up here to have the little spiked guard that comes out in front, and enough space for the blade to connect to the handle. And from this, using about 7 inches as a guess, I think, maybe 26 inches as the 26. This is the part where I'm going to need to do a little bit of estimating, because maybe I want it at 20 inches. That seems like it could be a bit too short. 26 inches could work, or it could be too long. But like it said, it's a machete, so I should not have a 36-inch blade, or not even a 36-inch blade. I should not have 36 inches in total for this ceramic sword. That would be for other things like a katana, broadsword, or even something else I may make in the future. But for now, I'll stick it around 25 inches for the total length. To start out, I've got myself a large sheet of cardboard which I will be cutting into multiple sections so I can then trace out the design of the sword and copy it onto the others. I think I'm going to make the blade 2 pieces thick, maybe 3 depending as to how thin this cardboard is. Then I'm going to add additional pieces to either sides of the handle to give that a bit of thickness before I glue it all together. So I found a piece of cardboard that I like. I've made sure all the grains are going in a specific direction. I believe I covered this in my previous sword build, so if you'd like to check that out, you are more than welcome to. But to sum it up, it is to make sure that it is strong in one direction. And there will be less of a risk of it flopping about. So what I'm going to do now is take something like my yardstick and just my regular ruler, and I'm now going to trace out what I think will be the proper size of the sword. I've now gotten myself a traced out piece of cardboard. It may be a little difficult to see. I know the lighting isn't perfect in here, so I decided to change the handle length up a little bit. Now it is 6 inches, and I still have to decide what length the sword will be. And as you may have seen when I was measuring the yardstick in hand with the other ruler, I was taking it and I was figuring out how wide I want the blade to be. And I've decided to go with 3.5 inches. That's just about the widest this sword will be. All the other details fit nicely inside. Now with that done, I get to move on to either cutting out multiple pieces or tracing the sword on first, then cutting out multiple pieces. We'll figure that out in a moment. As you can see, I've elected to go with just one sheet cut out. And the reason for this is the rest of my desk is really way too small to try and cut out and trace on that large sheet of cardboard. This will make it much easier to trace out and hopefully much easier to cut as well. So just sit back and enjoy as I get an idea as to what I want this sword to look like, what the handle will be like, what the blade will be like, and I still haven't decided on what the length is. So I'm just going with the length of cardboard I cut out, and I'll eventually trim it down. You know, this piece of cardboard might actually be a nice and proper length for what I want to do. But for now, I think what I'm going to try and do is freehand the handle portion of this, and then I'll go on to tracing out the rest of the blade. Because the blade should be simple, but the handle is kind of decorative, so I gotta take some special precautions with that. Or something. I don't know if you can tell or not, but I'm slightly struggling with this, and that is because I am not an artist. This is not the thing I do on a daily basis. I am basically just looking at a picture and trying to trace out what I see, and I don't know how well I'm doing at that. It's going to be probably a lot of erasing and rewriting. So you remember how I've mentioned having a good eraser will be very helpful? Well, I do not have a good eraser, and I really, really should have grabbed one. But now I have the handles traced out, and I don't know how well it looks, but it probably works well enough for what I'm doing. Now let's move on to the blade portion, which is actually just really simple. I just got to figure out how long I want my blade to be, put a little cone at the top, and then basically this is the width of the blade. It's that simple. Very nice. I've got 3 blades cut out, and I will be using, I think, probably 2 of them for the main blade. I cut out a 3rd one just for the sake of redundancy, in case the other screwed up. But that, I guess it wasn't really necessary, because, oh boy, I actually screwed up a whole lot more than I was hoping to on this. I ended up making a lot of cuts that were probably not necessary, and ended up chewing up the handle. That annoys me so much. I might be able to get away with it by beveling it later, but at this point, I kind of just need to cut out or cut off a section of this handle, glue it onto here, glue another one onto the other side, and then that way I can do the final wrap, and this thing should basically be complete. It's not very complex. I could make it a whole lot more complex, but nah. I could add another few layers or go with some thinner cardboard. I have now gotten all of the pieces cut out for this sword, and goodness gracious, that took a lot longer to do than I had anticipated. Messing up these handles was not good. Since I had only cut 3 of these sword blade pieces, I ended up having to make 2 more handles. I should have just made 4 sword blade pieces. I could have cut the handles off of those. But no, I messed those up, so I made some new ones. Either way, these are much better. They're nice and clean, and I'll be able to put them on both sides of the build. And hopefully it'll be relatively nice to hold. A little detail which I didn't record though was these little pieces here. These are details that are on the sword that, I don't know if they actually serve any purpose, but I didn't want to cut it out of thick cardboard. So what I did is I took some shoebox cardboard that we have, traced out the design, and cut out 2 pieces. You can see that this one is a little more floppy or flexible than the other, and that's because I decided I didn't want to try freehanding it, so I just folded it in half and cut it out so it would be nice and symmetrical. But now that all of these pieces are here and it should be all set, that means I'm now ready for gluing. I've got my glue gun all prepped, and now I can actually finally assemble this. This is going to be fun. I kind of skipped a step, I guess. I've got these food skewers here. These are very useful because what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some of the holes on the bottom and just poke them through so they can provide some supports to the blade itself. I might do 2, just 1 in each handle, or I might shove 2 into one blade and make it very rigid. I'm not too entirely sure yet. I think I might even just need 1. I don't know. I think, yeah, we'll try it. We'll see what happens. These are difficult to get in. Oh my goodness. Why is this so difficult? Ow. Okay, so with a quick delay after trying to get the skewers in, which was incredibly difficult, I'm actually very surprised it was so difficult to get them in. I'm now going to move on to gluing, which is what I was originally intending to do. I'm glad I got the skewers in, though. It should make it nice and rigid, or at least relatively rigid. The gluing, though, should help keep everything together. Ta-da! This is Nausicaä's ceramic sword, finally complete. But it is not the greatest. I messed up multiple times during the construction of this, so it is far from perfect. I messed up cuts on the tip, I messed up a bunch of cuts on the handle, tried to fix everything with this, but the handle feels a bit odd. I may bevel it and add some cardboard veneer of sorts to the edge of it just to make it feel a little better, but for now, this is a finished project. I do hope to revisit something like this in the future, maybe make an actual ceramic sword. That would be amazing. And like the book said, this is not meant to be a sword, this is more or less a machete or like a mountain knife. It's not meant to be a weapon, which would be perfect for the ceramic sword I would make. I would probably just make it out of, I'm not too sure what kind of ceramic. There's a few different types, I know that much. I do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you around in the next video.